So when it comes to rendering HTML, you may be familiar with Bootstrap. So getbootstrap.com, inside of this starter template on version 4, that's where we are. We are actually going to be using this to style our e-commerce page. We're going to go into Bootstrap a lot more in a further section, but we might as well get some of these things installed now so we can test out our skills a little bit more. Notice this is roughly doing the exact same thing, except it's added a few different things to us, right? So it's added the Bootstrap CSS, and it's added some other stuff. So we actually want to render this instead of this. Now, one way we could do it is copying all of this code, right? So I copy this, and I come in here and say HTML equals to, I'm going to use 3 quotes. These 3 quotes allow you to have a very long string in here, basically, right? So that's a long Python string. And I'm going to grab this HTML underscore and put it in place of that hello world stuff, right? So now I've got my HTTP response returning all of this. Perfect. So let's go back in here and refresh. It actually did render that. It doesn't seem like anything changed. So let's just add something to it that I know exists, even if you don't. And I'm going to just add a div class in here, and I'll call it text center. And I'm going to close off that div class in here. Okay. Refresh, and there we go. So it's definitely working, right? And again, you'll learn about this stuff later, but for now, we see that, hey, this is actually rendering out a more robust version of what we just did. But here comes the issue. Now, I introduced this thing called render before. What render does is it can allow us to use a template that's already HTML. So it's written as HTML. It's not like inline Python string code as it is right here. So what we need to do is actually set up our project to work with an actual HTML document or an HTML template. So we're going to jump into our main configuration folder where that e-commerce folder is, also where urls.py is, and probably your views.py. We're going to go into settings.py here, and I'm going to scroll down to this template area. Now, don't worry, we will talk about a lot of these other things as we go forward, but we're doing everything piece by piece, so you'll get the context when you need it. So if you don't see something that like in the future, let us know, because we'll talk about it. We definitely will talk about it. This is a very comprehensive course. So inside of here, we have something called DIRs. So what we're doing here is we're going to set up a folder or a directory to where we're actually going to hold our HTML. In other words, where we're going to hold a document that actually stands for this HTML itself. Now, if you've done website design, it's really just that .html document, whatever that's going to be. Okay, so inside of settings.py, we're going to create a new directory or at least a path to that new directory. But we're not going to be inventing anything new, and we're not going to go into too much explanation here. Instead, I'm just going to go ahead and copy the one from databases. I'm going to bring that up into this directory here, and I'm going to get rid of this called db.sqlite3 and put templates here instead. So this is a directory. So that directory may or may not exist. We'll talk about that in a second, but we now put in this place where we're going to end up holding all of our templates. And as far as the base directory is concerned, that's where manage.py is. But notice that I have a db.sqlite3. That's where I want this templates folder to be. The reason I know that is because of this right here, right? So we've got this baster and db.sqlite3. So I want it on the same path as that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do new folder and say templates. Okay. So inside of templates, I'm going to make a new file in here. We're going to save it. And I'm going to call this just home_page.html. Homepage.html. Go back into that view. I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this and paste it into that homepage. Now it's a lot better. This is actual HTML code now. So that means I have syntax checking and all this stuff. And if I do something like a p tag, it will automatically allow me to close it off and do all sorts of things that you really want to do with an HTML document. The other nice thing is that we can just render these HTML documents out. We can use this instead of writing all this. So I'm going to say homepage old. I'm just going to call this homepage old with that underscore there. And instead, I'm going to go ahead and copy Well, actually, I'm not even going to copy. I'm just going to say define homepage, and it's going to take in a request. And now instead of returning the HTTP response, we're going to do a Django-related shortcut called render, which is going to take in the request, some template name. In our case, we called it homepage.html. And then we'll just put an empty dictionary for the context for now. We'll talk about that in a moment. So if we look in here, it says homepage.html. So it's really just going for that. I'm going to go ahead and save it, and we'll refresh in here. Whoa, nothing changed. Let's just make sure something changed in here, and we'll say, hello world, we're working. So homepage.html, hello world, we're working. We save this, refresh, boom. Now we are using templates. We're using Django templates, and this is how it's done instead of just rendering some random HTTP response or any various HTTP response. Hopefully this is fairly straightforward. We're really just creating a function that handles this URL. That URL goes to this view and it returns this HTML document, which is signified here. If it doesn't make sense, let's just stop for a second and really just think about this. So if it makes sense, just go ahead and go on to the next one. If it doesn't make sense, we'll come from here. So when you go to a web page, you're asking that web page for something, right? So like on Django.com, I go ahead and refresh this. Notice it refreshed. It's refreshing. What it does is it asks the server for something. Now the server has to know what that something is. And in our case, that something comes off of a view, right? So you ask for something in a URL. That URL looks for a view. That view returns back something. In our case, it's just returning back some basic HTML page. Now, the really good thing about Django is we can make these HTML pages more powerful. And we do this by using context. So we can actually change the context as into what's in this HTML page. That's where it really gets powerful. And that's something we'll do in the next one. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments. Otherwise, let's keep going.